He didn't just kill his mother, he took a selfie with her severed head and smiled. His name's Bashad, he's 23, living with his mom, Tanya Bird, in the Bronx. Tanya was a great mom. She was a caretaker working non-stop, taking care of Bashid and his younger brother who had Down syndrome. She sacrificed everything for him, but he still despised her. On Twitter and MySpace, he literally named his profiles Kill Tanya Bird, not even trying to hide it. And that night she confronted him, holding his phone, looking at those sick posts. She told him to man up, take responsibility for your 3-month-old baby, stop acting like a child, you're the parent now. And that's when something in him completely snapped. He grabbed a kitchen knife and violently stabbed her in the neck over and over until she collapsed, bleeding out on the floor. Then he caught his friend William, and together, using a power saw they specifically bought for this, they dismembered her body into dozens of pieces. But the most disturbing part, the selfie. This man picked up his mother's severed head, posed with it, and took multiple selfies. What the actual What kind of monster does that? That night, surveillance cameras caught Bashid and William walking out carrying really big garbage bags out of the apartment. By the next day, those same bags were found scattered all over in different locations throughout the Bronx. One had her arms, another her legs, another her shoulders. I mean, her torso was still wearing her bra. Her body was still wearing the same clothes from when she was killed. And her severed head was found stuffed inside of a blood-soaked suitcase with her leg. Police immediately went to his apartment and the place reeked of bleach. The murder weapon was still there, and on his phone the detectives discovered those photos. The images were actually so disturbing that one of the officers had to step out because they felt like throwing up. In court, Bashid literally tried blaming it on his friend William. I mean, nobody was buying it, and he was convicted of murder and dismemberment and sentenced to 25 years to life because...
Did you know that Princess Anne survived a terrifying kidnap attempt? And her response to the kidnapper was iconic. On the 20th of March 1974, 23-year-old Princess Anne and her then husband, Captain Mark Phillips, were in a car making their way to Buckingham Palace. The couple had attended a charity event that evening and left at around about 8 p.m. As they were being driven down towards Buckingham Palace, out of nowhere, a car pulled out in front of the royal car, forcing the royal car to stop and blocking them on the road. Anne's police bodyguard, Jim Beaton, got out of the royal car and approached this other car to see what was going on, to tell this man to leave or to move out of the way, when he would be shot by the driver, Ian Ball. Ian then pounced out of his car and shot the royal chauffeur, making his way to the door, pulling on the handle, trying to rive it open to kidnap the princess. Jim managed to crawl to the other side of the car and got into the car that way, and then essentially used his own body as a shield for Princess Anne. Ian would fire 2 more shots into the car, both of them being aimed at the princess, but both of them would hit Jim, one in his hand and one in his abdomen. After being shot now 3 times, Jim then fell out of the car, and Ian took this as the opportunity to grab hold of Princess Anne. He took her by the arm and pulled with so much force that it actually ripped the arm and all down the back of her dress. When she refused to comply and go with Ian, he was telling her, "You are coming with me," to which the princess responded, quote, "Not bloody likely." A passerby who witnessed the commotion stepped in to help, punching Ian Ball, freeing the princess from his grasp. As police officers now descended on the scene, Ian tried to make a run for it, but he was very quickly captured. The contents of his car would reveal a horrifying plan that he had for Princess Anne. Inside the car, they found a set of handcuffs, tranquilizer, along with a ransom letter which was addressed to the Queen. He was demanding £2 million in exchange for Princess Anne's safe return. He would later be sentenced to a life term within a mental health facility.
This 10-year-old ended his mother's life because she wouldn't buy him a VR headset. 10-year-old Noah Mann Tate lived with his mother Kiana Mann in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Noah really wanted a virtual reality headset, and when he asked his mother if he could get one, she told him no. Once Noah was told no, he became enraged and came up with a sinister plan. On the morning of November 21st of 2022, Noah allegedly retrieved a handgun from the house and hid it in his nightstand. He waited until Kiana was doing laundry, shot her in the face, and ended her life instantly. Instead of calling for help, Noah went online, used his mother's credit card, and ordered that VR headset. That same morning, he also attacked his 7-year-old cousin, adding to family fears about his violent behavior. Noah was interviewed by investigators, and he stated that it was an accident, that he was just twirling the gun trying to scare her. But later, he ended up admitting that he aimed directly at his mom. Relatives revealed that Noah had troubling behavior. He had rage issues, he would roam the house at night, he spoke of imaginary people, and he once tried to start a fire with a balloon with flammable liquid. A state psychologist found signs of mild anxiety and psychotic symptoms, but stated that he was competent for trial. Even though Noah was only 10 years old, Wisconsin law states that homicide cases just like this need to start in an adult court. If he is convicted of first-degree intentional homicide, he could face up to 60 years in prison.
She brutally pickaxed 2 people to death and then found God. Her name was Carla. She was 23, dating this guy named Dan. And one night, high out of their minds, they broke into their friend Jerry's apartment. They used to be really close, but then a fight changed everything, so now they're trying to rob him. And what started as a robbery turned into a full-blown bloodbath. Carla walked up to Jerry, who was sleeping, and she sat on top of him. He immediately woke up and starts freaking out, but before he could even scream, Danny grabs a hammer and starts bashing him on his skull over and over until Jerry starts making like this awful gurgling noise. And that's when Carla sees this huge pickaxe leaning against the wall, and so she grabs it and swings it straight onto his chest. Jerry is screaming, but she does not stop. She yanks it out and swings it again and again over 20 times. She later told people that she got off on it like an actual orgasm mid-murder. And after all that swinging, Carla hears a very faint breathing sound. Someone else was in the room. A woman named Deborah. She was hiding under the covers, trying not to breathe. Carla walks up to her, lifts the axe up, and swings it into her shoulder. But Carla just smiles as she keeps swinging and swinging until it drives straight through her chest and literally crushes her heart. Then they leave like nothing happened, and for days they bragged about it to their friends, saying how fun it was, and that's how they eventually got caught. They were both arrested. Danny died while in prison, and Carla got the death penalty, and that should have been the end of it, but then Carla found God. She started reading the Bible. She stopped fighting, stopped lashing out. She became a model inmate and even married a pastor. And now people were like, hold up, is this the same woman who got off on killing a man with a pickaxe? Because now she's talking about peace, forgiveness, and she meant it too. And now these big name pastors like Pat Robertson are begging for her mercy. He believed that the Carla who was a murderer didn't exist anymore. And it got people thinking, should she still die for what she did, or is the point of prison to help people change? But in 1998, Carla was still executed anyways, but her case still messes with people because at the end of the day,
he helped plan his twin boy's 7th birthday party, then hours before it brutally murdered his whole family. It was a Saturday morning in January 2010 in Florida. Twins Eric and Joshua Jacobson were super excited for their joint birthday party, and their mum couldn't wait either. Frankie Jacobson loved her sons. They were the light of her life. She had always been so good with kids, so much so that she actually wrote a kids book at one point. The dad of the family, Neil, was known to be a pretty big deal in the local area. To everyone looking in, he was super successful. He had loads of money, he owned a bunch of properties that he was renting out, and he had a lot of different money-making ventures. But the Great Recession in the US changed things for Neil. It was really taking its toll, and the housing market was crashing. Suddenly he was in big financial trouble. He was drowning in debt, but everybody around him thought he was this big, successful, rich guy, so he wanted to keep up appearances. And he was struggling in secret with his mental health. Now, does this make any of what he did acceptable? Absolutely not. But some people think that it contributed. He ended up going to the doctors and being like, I'm so low, I'm shaky, I'm anxious, so they ended up giving him some medication. And some think that this is why he went on to do the absolutely hideous things that he did. On the morning of his little boy's birthday party, traffic came to a stop in Palm Beach. An SUV had swerved off the road into a ditch, and a man was inside covered in blood. Paramedics raced over to the scene to help this guy, and suddenly he admitted to killing his entire family. They had no idea, is this right? Is he just confused? Has he had a hit on the head and he's just saying utter garbage? They knew that they needed to race to the family home and check. Sadly, it was just as they'd feared. Neil had shot his wife and his 2 children that morning. And I don't know if this makes things worse. To me, it feels like it does, but the wife actually knew what was going on. She knew what was about to happen to her. Just for a few seconds, she was aware she was about to die. She was awake at the time. She was in her bed and she saw Neil go to retrieve his weapon. In those seconds of being aware of what was happening, she begged him not to do this. She struggled to grab the weapon off him, but it was too late. He shot her in the head. He then callously walked into the twins' bedroom and killed them both. Took a bunch of medication and got in his car and decided to just drive away. Obviously he was pretty out of it due to the tablets, and that's what caused this big crash. Hours later, after he was rushed to the hospital and checked out and made sure that he was okay, he was finally arrested. And he said he couldn't believe what he had done. Once he'd sobered up from the medication, he was adamant that it's the medication's fault. He said, "It never helped me, it made me so much worse. It actually made my symptoms a lot more severe." He said he became paranoid and confused, and he was kind of out of his mind. But some people think he knew exactly what he was doing, and this was all pre-planned. Some people think he was just using medication to worm his way out of this. He ended up pleading guilty and being given life without parole, but he claims that he didn't know at the time, that his lawyers didn't tell him that he could plead not guilty due to reason of insanity. He said if he had known that, he would have done that. He blames the pharmaceutical companies. He said it was their fault that his family have died. Regardless of who's to blame, Frankie, Eric, and Joshua are now all buried together under a patch of grass.
This case really reminds me of the Gabby Petito case. A seemingly normal, happy couple go travelling in their camper, but only one of them return home. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Emily Filazzo. Emily and Joseph Filazzo were described as a couple who were magnetic. They were always together. There was a 19-year age gap between the couple. Emily was 22 and Joseph was 41. However, their age difference made no difference to them whatsoever, and they got married in October 2020. They appeared to be the perfect couple, posting plenty of happy photos online. They spent some time converting a bus/van into a camper, and they would go travelling in this, but I also believe that they lived in it as well. In October 2021, with their first year wedding anniversary approaching, the couple decided to leave where they currently were, which was New Hampshire, and travel over to Vermont. They were going to be staying in the beautiful Bolton Valley Resort, ready to celebrate their first full year as wife and husband. They arrived on the 16th of October and met up with Joseph's sister Nicola, who was staying in an Airbnb nearby. The plan for that evening was that they were all going to meet up at the Airbnb later and hang out, chill for a little bit. But by the time it got to just after 9:30, Nicola would receive a text message from Joseph saying, quote, "Hey, we're gonna take the night to rest. You still drink coffee? We'll see you tomorrow morning." When the next morning rolled around, Joseph joined Nicola and her boyfriend for breakfast, but there was no sign of Emily. Joseph had claimed that they got into some sort of argument and that she didn't want to be there anymore, and so she stormed off, leaving him behind. He would return back to New Hampshire without Emily, and immediately this raised all of the red flags for her family. They didn't believe his story that Emily had stormed away, especially because they were aware that the quote-unquote happy couple actually weren't so happy. They had started noticing that Emily sometimes had bruises and scratches that she couldn't explain. Whenever they asked her what was going on, she would just brush them off with excuses. But they had their suspicions that she was a victim of DV. Some members of her family actually never liked Joseph because his eyes looked evil. It would be Emily's family that reported her missing to the police. And only days later, police would receive a chilling phone call. Joseph was out and about in the car with one of his friends when the topic eventually landed on Emily and where she was. Joseph would turn to his friend and told him, quote, "Emily's back in the van. She's not alive." On the evening of October 16th, after leaving his sister, Joseph and Emily got into an alleged fiery argument. He would claim that Emily was abusive towards him, and on this evening she got drunk and she began to hit him, punch him, kick him, even attacking him with a candlestick. He claimed that Emily then leaned down in order to retrieve a gun, and out of fear, using a gun that he already had in his hand, he lifted it up, pointing it at Emily before shooting her twice, killing her. He would then drive the camper van 60 miles away and began the process of dismembering her body using a handsaw. After being dismembered, her remains would be stuffed into bin liners and then hidden in the bathroom of the camper. Joseph then returned back to breakfast with his sister and her boyfriend, and for the entire time that Emily was missing, he acted totally fine. He wasn't worried. He was, however, trying to cover his tracks by sending Emily seemingly worried text messages and trying to call her. but he knew that she was never going to pick up. Once Emily's body was discovered, Joseph was very quickly arrested, and surprisingly, he would admit to shooting Emily and killing her, but he denied that it was murder, and he firmly stated that this was an act of self-defense. During the trial, however, experts would refute his story. Evidence showed that Emily had been shot twice in the head while she was laying down, and that she had a red cushion or pillow covering her head as she was being shot. So she wasn't shot during an abusive rampage, as he had said. He also claimed that she was drunk, but toxicology reports would show no alcohol in her system. Joseph Filazzo would be found guilty of the murder of Emily Filazzo. He was handed a sentence of life imprisonment with a minimum of 42.5 years to serve.
Her father-in-law secretly kept hundreds of photos of her, and not long after, she disappeared without a trace. Susan Cox Powell was born on October 16th of 1981, and she was originally from Oregon before she moved to West Valley City, Utah with her husband and 2 sons. She was described as a loving mother, but her marriage to her husband Josh was troubled. He was controlling with money, unstable with jobs, and often erratic. Susan often confided to others that she was scared of him, and she had even drafted a secret will that said, "If I die, it may have not been an accident." On December 6 of 2009, the family attended church and she called a friend that evening. That would be the last time that anyone heard from her, and by December 7th, she was missing. When Josh spoke to police, he told them a bizarre story about how he took their sons camping in freezing weather after midnight and Susan just stayed home. Inside of the home, police found 2 box fans blowing on wet carpet. They also found Susan's purse, phone, and keys left behind. But nothing about Josh's story made any sense. Their youngest son, Charlie, later told investigators, "Mommy went camping with us, but she didn't come back." Even friends had reported that Susan was talking about leaving her husband, and investigators believed that there was probably an argument that night. The case quickly shifted, and Josh was the prime suspect. As detectives were digging deeper, they uncovered another disturbing figure, Josh's father, Stephen Powell. Stephen was secretly obsessed with Susan and kept hundreds of hidden photos and videos of her. Many were taken without her knowledge, and he also wrote explicit journals about his fantasies with her. Susan had told her friends that she was deeply uncomfortable with him, and he had even tried to make advances towards her. Although Stephen was never charged in Susan's disappearance, many believe that he knew more than he admitted. In 2012, Stephen was convicted of having inappropriate photos of children when police had raided his home. In 2011, Josh ended up losing custody of his sons due to evidence of abuse, and they were placed in the custody of Susan's parents. On February 5th of 2012, there was a supervised visit at Josh's home, but he ended up locking the social worker outside of his home. He then attacked his sons with a hatchet, set the house on fire, and Josh and his sons died in the explosion. The social worker called 911 after she smelled gas and heard screams from inside of the home, but once help had arrived, it was already too late. To this day, Susan's body has never been found. Investigators believe that Josh had ended Susan's life the night she disappeared and hid her remains in the Utah desert or abandoned mine shafts. Steve ended up dying in 2018 and never revealed what he knew. Susan's family continues to honor her and her sons, pushing for stronger protection for domestic violence victims.
A school bus filled with 26 children, all kidnapped and buried alive. This is the largest case of mass kidnapping in American history. The Chowchilla kidnapping, this is one of the most bizarre true crime cases. You're gonna think that I'm telling you the plot of a movie. Ed Ray was the school bus driver that fateful day in California in 1976. He's driving his normal bus route. He's driving on a more rural stretch of land when he notices a white van stopped in the middle of the road. Thinking that maybe they're experiencing some kind of car trouble, he pulls over to try and help them, and that's when 2 men get out of the van. They have nylon stockings over their heads and they're carrying large weapons, and they start approaching the school bus. Ed has 26 children on his school bus, ranging in ages from 5 years old to 14 years old, and he's terrified if he makes one wrong move that these men are going to open fire on all these children. So for the time being, he complies with whatever they say. The 2 men hijack the school bus and begin driving it away, while a 3rd kidnapper is following behind them in the white van. They drove to a secluded area, and that's when they loaded the 26 children and the school bus driver Ed into 2 vans, and then they drove those vans 12 hours. And the back of the vans are completely boarded up, so they're in these vans for 12 hours in total darkness. Can you even imagine the fear and confusion? Ed is the only adult in the situation, trying his best to be responsible for 26 children, try and keep them calm and keep them safe. safe. And meanwhile, back home, dozens of parents are realizing that their children have not come home from school. The authorities find the school bus just abandoned in that secluded area, and now there's massive panic. Everyone knew about this for miles. Could you even imagine 26 children and their bus driver just all vanishing into thin air? And the phone lines are absolutely being blown up with hundreds of calls. People are calling in with tips or theories. The media is calling. Concerned family members and community members are calling. The phones are ringing off the hook. Meanwhile, the children and Ed have been in the back of this van driving for 12 hours. They're taken over 100 miles away from home. And then the van stops. And the three men, they come, open the door, and they take Ed, and then they slam the door. And then a while later, they go back and they take another child and then slam the door. And then a bit later, they go and take another child and they slam the door, and this continues. And the people, the children that are still left in the van have no idea what's happening to their friends or if they're even alive. Luckily, they were all alive. The three kidnappers took them all, each one by one, asked them what their names were, then made them remove what they were wearing, and then directed them to climb down into a hole that they had buried underground. The three kidnappers had buried a small moving van underground, and it was small, 27 feet long, and now there's 27 people in it. There was dirty mattresses on the ground, a small amount of food and water, and then the kidnappers took one single roll of toilet paper, threw it down at them, and then told the 26 children and Ed that they would be back for them later, and then covered the hole with a manhole grate. I keep going back to how terrifying this situation would be for anyone, but this is happening to children as young as 5 years old. And then they hear dirt being thrown on top of that manhole cover. They are being buried alive 12 feet underground. And you're probably all wondering what kind of monsters are doing this. Well, you might be surprised to learn that these three kidnappers are all in their early 20s and extremely wealthy. For context, the ringleader in this mass kidnapping scheme, Fred Woods' family made $80 million the year this happened in 1976, which would be almost $400 million in today's money. And Fred's accomplices were brothers named James and Richard Schoenfeld, and they also came from a wealthy family, but all three men were lazy and did not want to work and were being cut off from daddy's money. They're all in massive debt, but they're lazy. They don't want to work. They want a get-rich-quick scheme, and that's how they came up with the idea to kidnap a school bus full of children so they could ask the state of California for a $5 million ransom for the children's safe return. And they planned this out for about a year and a half. And after they buried the 26 children and Ed underground, they went back home to call the authorities and make the ransom demand. But remember, the phones are ringing off the hook with those hundreds of calls of tips and the media and concerned citizens. So their call for ransom demand could not go through. The three men decided that they were just going to try and call later. And in the meantime, they would take a little nap. You know, they had such a long day, but they napped so long, in fact, that Ed and the 26 children had been buried underground for over 12 hours. And they were running out of air. The small amount of food and water that the kidnappers have left for them, it was gone. The chances of them even getting out of this hole alive to be given up for ransom were looking slim. It had been over 12 hours and the kidnappers never came back like they said they would, and this just shows the amount of bravery and the will to survive that these children had, because they were going to get out of here. They began stacking those mattresses that were thrown on the ground on top of each other, and then started to stand on each other's shoulders so they could reach that manhole cover 12 feet above them. The oldest of the children was a 14-year-old boy named Michael Marshall, and he was able to kind of wiggle the manhole a little bit. So Ed, the bus driver, he climbs up and he holds it open to him just a little bit so that Michael was able to go in and wedge a piece of wood so he's able to wiggle the manhole actually off. The kidnappers had also put a heavy wooden box on top of the manhole, so 14-year-old Michael starts bashing at the wood and tearing at it with his bare hands until 16 hours after they were first imprisoned, he sees sunlight. 14-year-old Michael has just freed them. He's so brave because he's the first one to leave the hole, and he has no idea if the kidnappers are going to be out there waiting for him. And then Ed lifts each child one by one to Michael, until they're all free. All 27 of them are outside of the hole, and now they're looking around and they're in the middle of nowhere. There's just rolling California hills surrounding all of them. They're in this like mining area. They actually have been buried under a rock quarry. And there was an employee at the rock quarry that was about to go home. His shift was over, and he sees these 26 children and Ed just wandering around and realizes that they are the kidnapped children that everyone's been talking about. And when Dumb and Dumber finally wake up from their nap, they see on the news that, oh, all our kidnapping victims have been found alive. They tried to flee the country. It was actually extremely easy to identify that these men were the ones who did this because the rock quarry that they were all buried under, it belonged to Fred's father. And Fred had been seen by multiple employees digging holes at the rock quarry. And since Fred really only hung out with the Schoenfeld brothers, they were easy suspects. And their homes were just filled with evidence, including all of the kidnapped children's names just written on a fast food bag. They found a draft of the ransom letter, and then they also found a document just titled Plan that documented and described all of their plan in a lot of detail. All three men were eventually brought into custody and charged with 27 counts of kidnapping and 5 counts of kidnapping with bodily harm. A lot of the children were actually brave enough to testify and face their kidnappers, and all three men were found guilty of all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But all three men were able to successfully appeal the bodily harm charges because, technically they didn't beat them or anything. But all, or at least most of the children and Ed suffered with lifelong PTSD, trauma, anxiety, on top of the fact that they almost died down in that hole and they had to fight their way out to survive. But the court system decided that they did not count as bodily harm enough. So their sentences were all reduced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, and today all men have been released on parole. Richard was released in 2012, James was released in 2015, and Fred was released pretty recently in 2022. I know you guys are gonna have a lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts about this case. If you guys are still with me, thank you, because I know this was a long one. I'm gonna be reading all your guys' comments, replying to as many as I can. Let me know all your thoughts and opinions on this case. I know they'll be strong. And also while you're there, let me know what case you want to see me cover next. I love you guys so much. You have no idea, and I will see you tomorrow.
What is going on here, actually? 5 months after a couple was found unalived in their own house, their 17-year-old daughter gets arrested. 41-year-old Kristen Brock and her husband, 45-year-old James Brock, lived in Carroll County, Georgia. They had been together around 10 years and they were raising their kids together. And I was looking into this and they truly seem like such an amazing couple. They were involved in their community. They attended church regularly. A friend of theirs described them by saying, quote, "Kristen was bubbly and fun and she loved hugs. She never met a stranger. And James, he was just a comical kind of guy. He would always crack jokes and always say something to make you laugh." Earlier this year, February 20th, officers received a 911 call from 16-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick. She called to report that her parents were unalived. The lighting is weird, sorry guys. It was her little sister, her half-sister, who was 5 years old at the time, who found her parents unalived, lying in their bed. They had been Family members were heartbroken. I think that goes without saying, but they weren't only dealing with the loss. For the last 5 months, they've been trying to make sense of the situation. And they've been living in this state of not only complete and utter devastation, but also shock and confusion because it made no sense how or why or when anyone would have done that to Kristen and James. It truly felt like it was out of the blue. And since it happened, Carroll County officers have been at the house nonstop trying to move the investigation along, but the case remained unsolved until yesterday when an arrest was made. 17-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault. Sarah was Kristen's daughter. James was her stepdad. She was 16 years old in February. She's 17 years old now, but she was at the house. She was living at the house with them. And she was the one who made the 911 call that night. Her biological father was the one who drove her to the station to turn herself in after she found out that she had a warrant out for her arrest. But like I said, in February, she had been living with her mom and her stepdad. Although she did kind of move around for a little bit, she had been staying different places for the last couple of years. Her 5-year-old sister, who's now 6, was the one who found the parents, and she had to go get Sarah. She had to go grab Sarah to tell her. Then Sarah called 911, but you would imagine that the weapon was loud enough to have alerted Sarah. So it's weird that it was that poor girl. There were no signs of forced entry. Investigators have said that one of the doors of the house was left slightly ajar, but nothing had been taken. But when asked, authorities have said that they are more than confident that they have the right person in custody, even though they have no idea what the motive would have been, no idea if anyone else was involved or aware of what was going to happen. They haven't stated if they believe that it was premeditated or not, although they don't suspect that it had anything to do with self-defense because, again, they were found in their bed when they were sleeping. They were at their most vulnerable state. They haven't said if the weapon would have already been inside the house, like maybe it was owned by the family, or if the weapon was brought into the house, but they have said they've made it very clear that they have, quote, a mountain of physical and digital evidence that makes them really confident that they arrested the right person. The weirdest thing about this entire case, though, hands down, is Sarah's behavior after following the loss of her mother and her stepdad. She was unbelievably active on social media, making so many sad videos, so many sad trend videos, but also sad videos of her own about how much the loss was affecting her, crying her eyes out because her parents were never going to be able to see her graduate, never going to be able to see her at her wedding, crying on social media because she didn't get to say goodbye. She posted on Mother's Day pictures of them. She spoke at the funeral, gave a speech, bawling her eyes out in front of everyone, and then she was arrested and charged. And here's the thing, months have passed, which leads me to believe that authorities have been doing their homework. They've been taking the time to make sure that they have enough evidence to prove that she was the person responsible, because it wasn't like she was immediately suspected since the beginning and they arrested her. She wasn't arrested for months, and obviously her living in the house, her DNA would have been all over, DNA and fingerprints all over the house, so it wasn't like it was something like that that made them suspicious of her. And authorities announcing that they have a mountain of evidence leads me to believe that they do. Of course, this is all alleged. We'll have to see how it plays out. There's little to no information so far other than the arrest, but shocking nonetheless because of how loud her social media presence was. Sarah Grace Patrick is now 17 years old and she is being tried as an adult. And by the way, if you were wondering, the little girl who was 5, who is now 6 years old at the time, is living with family members. I guess we'll have to see how this plays out. I know I'm going to be keeping an eye on it and I'll keep you guys posted if I hear anything, but yeah. That's it for me today. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
Why did these teenage twin girls unalive their own mother? Their mother, Nikki, was born in prison. Her own mother gave birth to her behind bars while she was in prison for substance charges. So she was raised by her grandmother, who tried to give her a good life, but Nikki was a rebellious child that did not like to follow the rules. This is what her grandmother said. So Nikki was pregnant by 17 with identical twin girls that went by the nicknames Jazz and Taz. But Nikki was a child herself. She said that she was not ready for the responsibilities that came with motherhood for one child, let alone twins. Nikki still wanted to be a teenager. She wanted to go out and party. She was this huge social butterfly. She wanted to go out. She wanted to drink, occasionally use substances. And Nikki was very much in and out of her twin daughters' lives whenever it was convenient for her. So Jazz and Taz were raised by Nikki's grandmother that had also raised her. But the girls really liked their life with their great grandmother. They were sweet girls, innocent girls. They were in a lot of activities at school and really excelled in school. So when their mother, Nikki, tried to come back into their lives when they were 13 years old and tried to disrupt all of that, they were very angry. Nikki was 25 years old and living with her boyfriend, who was a 55-year-old man named Robert, who was gone a lot for work. Nikki had turned her life around. She was clean, she had gotten a degree, she had gotten a job, and she was ready to have custody of her 13-year-old daughters. So now Jazz and Taz are living with their mother, Nikki, and they are angry. They liked living with their great-grandmother. They liked their school. They liked their friends. They did not think it was fair that this was all stolen from them because a woman who was always in and out of their life finally wanted to make them a priority. They absolutely resented Nikki, and these sweet, innocent girls that they were always described as began to rebel. They were staying out late and partying. They were dating older guys, like 17-year-old boys, when they were only 13. So to combat this, Nikki wanted to discipline them and be an authority figure. She wanted to give them lots of rules and structure because she did not want her daughters to make the same mistakes that she did. But this just put a bigger wedge between Jazz and Taz and Nikki. It was very much 2 against 1. In the twins' eyes, their mother, Nikki, is a hypocrite. Like, how are you going to tell us that we can't date older guys and party when you've been partying our entire life instead of raising us, and you're literally dating someone who's 30 years older than you? This anger that the twins felt for Nikki turned to hate, and then it turned violent, and they would attack Nikki, which landed them in juvie. And when they were released back in Nikki's custody under a 2-week trial period to see if they could make it work, Nikki really wanted to work on their issues. She wanted to make things right. When they came home, she tried to throw them a welcome home party, but the one twin just left the house completely, and the other twin just locked herself in her room. And then everything came to a boiling point on January 13th, 2010, when Jazz and Taz, who are only 16 years old, claimed they came home from school and found their mother's body slumped over the bathtub. This was a gruesome scene, you guys. There was blood everywhere. Nikki had been hit over the head with a daze. She had 50 to 80 wounds from a sharp object, and then she passed away having her head held under the water of the bathtub. It was clear to the investigators that this attack was personal. This was not a random attack by an intruder. And Nikki's twin daughters are inconsolable. The one twin is shaking back and forth and violently biting at her own arm because she said it was the only thing that could calm her down. And when the twin girls were being questioned, they just kept crying and saying that they wanted their mama, which honestly was kind of suspicious to the investigators because both girls are saying that they want their mama, but neither of them really had anything nice to say about Nikki. Honestly, they had a lot of bad things to say about her. And they're crying, but there's no tears coming out. And also, both girls had a lot of injuries and cuts on their arms and hands, but without any solid evidence that they were involved, they just took photos of both their arms and hands and released them. And for months after that, Jazz and Taz just lived life as normal. They went to parties, they went to school, they were hanging out with their older boyfriends, going to prom. Until 4 months after Nikki was unalived and the investigators got that golden piece of evidence that they called it that incriminated the girls. Nikki's teeth perfectly lined up to the bite mark on the one girl's arm. When she said that she was biting herself to calm her down, she was really trying to cover up the fact that her mom bit her while her and her twin sister were unaliving her. They were arrested and both girls took a plea deal for a full confession. What they said happened that day on January 13th, 2010 is they did not want to go to school that day. And this broke out in a huge fight between Nikki, Jazz, and Taz. And in their own words, it got so violent that they felt like it was either them or Nikki. And after this vicious attack on their mother that ended with her life being taken, they just cleaned themselves off and went to school like nothing happened. With the plea deal, the twin girls, who were only 16 years old when they unalived their mother, were given 30 years in prison with the possibility of parole and early release in May of 2025. But if they are denied parole, both girls will be released when they're 46 years old. I personally have a hard time racking my brain around the fact that these girls, before they went and lived with Nikki, were described by everyone as sweet and innocent. Those were the description words I kept seeing while researching this case. They were sweet and innocent. So if the girls were as sweet and innocent as everyone said, I just can't rack my head around the fact that they committed this super violent crime. I feel like there's either something that we don't know, or the girls weren't always as sweet and innocent as everyone described them as, but you're definitely gonna have to let me know what you think about that. This is just my opinion, but I totally understand the resentment that Jazz and Taz felt with Nikki, but I do not think this crime was justified at all. And personally, 46 years old, they will be released one day. The latest they will be released is 46 years old, and that's a lot of life left to live. And if the girls were as sweet and innocent as everyone described them as, and then they just hated their mother, that they were able to snap and commit this truly violent crime, that scares me. But you're gonna have to let me know what you think about that. Definitely let me know all your thoughts, theories, questions, everything in the comment section. I read my comments all the time. I reply to as many as I can. And while you're there, let me know what case you want to see me cover next. I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Also, one final note, I was getting absolutely roasted in my comment section of the video I posted yesterday because turns out Job Corps, the S and the P are silent. I had no idea, and I've been mispronouncing that my entire life. So thanks for letting me know.
This is the story of Connie Serbel. July 7th, 2016, Naples, Florida police responds to shots fired in this wooded area right here near the 700 block of Goodlet Road. While searching the area, they discovered two deceased men, and it was clear that they both were shot. They were identified as 18-year-old Xavier Sierra and 18-year-old John Fargas. Now, the police initially thought that They just shot each other by the look at the crime scene, but they decided to question the 911 caller, who just happened to be Connie Serbu. She is also John Fargus's sister. She told the police that this was her brother and Xavier was an acquaintance, and that she was sitting in the car when she heard the shots, but she don't have any idea what happened. But when they took her in for questioning, the police noticed that Connie was on edge. At one point, she even blurted out, "This is all my fault." So they decided to test her hands for gunshot residue. And during questioning with Xavier's grandmother, she told them that right before the murder, Connie had came to their house asking Xavier if he wanted to make a couple extra dollars helping her build furniture. Now the grandma thought that was strange because they had fallen out years prior and haven't seen or spoken to each other since. With that evidence and the gunshot residue test coming back positive, Connie blurted out her confession. She said, "Yeah, I killed him. So what? I don't care. He sexually assaulted my daughter. I don't care. He sodomized my daughter. She told me everything." Connie told the police that her and her brother picked up Xavier from his house and that they had 2 guns, 2 stun guns, a potato to use as a silencer, an ice pick, plastic gloves, bags, and paper towels. They were taking him to the wooded area, but while en route, she was questioning Xavier about the sexual assault of her daughter. When Xavier realized what was going on, he hopped at the car when they stopped at a red light and tried to flee, but John Vargas chased him. He tackled Xavier and the two started wrestling over the gun, which led to John getting shot in the stomach. That was when Connie opened fire, shooting Xavier 6 times, killing him. So apparently Memorial Day weekend of the year prior is when Connie's daughter confided in her, telling her about Xavier sexually assaulting her. Now, Connie had told all her friends that she was going to kill him. She even told her husband she was going to kill him, and also told her husband, "You're going to have to take care of these other kids because I'm about to do what I got to do." Connie Serbu was charged with second-degree murder and her trial began October 2019. During her opening statement, she told the jury that this murder was solely motivated by the fact that he had sexually assaulted her daughter. During the trial, it also came out that the daughter told the babysitter as well. She said that Xavier started molesting her around the age of 5. And also, John Fargus, Connie's brother, was intellectually disabled. He had the mind like a child. So they were saying that he was easily persuaded and that she was taking advantage of him with helping her with this murder. About a week after testimony, Connie was found guilty of second-degree murder, but her sentencing was delayed. But I don't see anything about it being picked back up. All I read was that she was facing life in prison. The last article I seen about her sentencing was in 2020. It's so weird. I can't find anything about her sentencing. She wanted to drop her public defender and get somebody new to represent her. But that's all I've seen. I have not seen no clear sentence for Connie. As far as her daughter, I couldn't find no picture or age, but I'm assuming she was below 18, but higher than 5. Had to be higher than 5 because she confided in her mother the year before, which was 2015, and she told her that this happened when she was 5 or 6 years old. Connie was 43 at the time of her trial, which was in 2019. But yellow tape, y'all know I always got to ask y'all the ending question. As a mother, would you believe your child out the gate? And I'm only asking this because I've seen a lot of controversy with this case. I've read a lot of comments, people going back and forth, arguing, saying that it was never no proof, that she took it too far. She should have just called the police. As a mother, and your daughter come to you with something like that, what would you do? And was Connie in the wrong?
You'd expect a delivery driver to drop off your parcel, so what if they stole your child? It was a freezing cold evening in November 2022 in Paradise, Texas. Just before 7 p.m., Elizabeth Strand panicked. All of a sudden, her stepdaughter Athena had vanished. She phoned her husband and explained, "Look, I saw Athena about an hour ago and now she's nowhere to be found." The 7-year-old was absolutely adorable. She was a first grader and she'd literally never not got a smile on her face. She made friends with absolutely everybody she met. She had 3 sisters and they had this unbreakable bond. But that night, her stepmom had no choice but to dial 911. Police, fire engines, ambulance, they all raced to the scene, but they were absolutely stumped. There was just no sign of this little girl anywhere. They dispatched police dogs, helicopters. It was chaos. Everybody was frantically trying to find this little girl. All through the night in the freezing conditions, search teams pressed on, but it didn't get them any closer to working out where she was. So they were like, okay, we need to find clues of what actually happened in this area around the time that Athena vanished. And they worked out that a FedEx delivery van was dropping off a parcel at that kind of time. Family had been getting a head start on Christmas presents, and they'd ordered a Christmas present for Athena herself. They had no ideas of the horrors this would lead to. So the FBI got in contact with FedEx and they were like, we need the details of the guy that was delivering the parcel to this house. And thankfully the vans were all fitted with cameras. What they found on that footage sent chills down their spine. The driver was 31-year-old Tanner Horner, and he was captured on that footage talking to the little girl. Then all of a sudden, she was randomly inside of the van. Why are you taking a child into your van? And when detectives tracked down the van driver, he had a disturbing tale to tell. He told police he had accidentally hit this little girl with his van. He was like, she said she was going to tell her dad and I realized that I was in trouble and I suddenly panicked. He said because she was injured, he tried to then break her neck. And when that didn't work, he strangled her with his bare hands. I mean, I don't know if I believe that. What about you guys? What do you think happened? I don't know if that is the truth or if the truth is even more sickening. He then led police to where he had dumped her lifeless body. Now, people either think that this was calculated and intentional, or it was an accident and he panicked. He is currently awaiting trial for kidnapping and murder.
This is the story of Ronnie Paris Sr. Trigger warning. February 2002, an anonymous person called the abuse hotline saying that 2-month-old Ronnie Paris Jr. had been vomiting for more than 24 hours, but his parents wasn't giving him the proper care. He was admitted to the hospital that same day, but the hospital staff said the vomiting was most likely from the parents overfeeding him. But just 2 months later, in April of 2002, little Ronnie was vomiting uncontrollably again, on top of being dehydrated. The caseworkers went on ahead and just took him out of the home and placed him with his grandparents. But that's also where Ronnie Paris Sr. was living. But the next month, Junior was back in the hospital because he lost a crazy amount of weight. And while he was getting examined by the doctor, they seen that he had 1 fractured arm and 1 fractured leg, and both injuries were at least 3 weeks old. They placed Junior in foster care, and he quickly got a foster mother named Faye Bean. Faye allowed the parents to see Junior, and when they visited, the mother was happy to see her son, but the father, Ronnie Paris Sr., would just sit on the couch and not pay him any attention. Faye had Junior for 2 years. She had taught him how to walk, taught him how to talk. She was planning on adopting him, but on December 14th, 2004, he was released back to his parents. They had completed a parenting course which allowed them to get Junior back, but Faye never stopped visiting him. But she started to get suspicious when she visited him early January of 2005, and he had what looked like a burn mark on his forehead and a bruise on his cheek. He was also looking very small. She immediately told the caseworker, and the caseworker scheduled a visit. Now, when the caseworker got there, she seen all of the bruises and the burns that Faye was talking about. On top of, Junior was vomiting while she was there, and he was not potty trained like he was when he was with Faye. The caseworker asked the parents about the injuries. The mother name is Nishira. I couldn't find a picture of her at all, but the mother said that the injuries were due to a fall. But the caseworker is just like, okay. She just accepted that and didn't do anything about it. But on January 13th, just a couple weeks later, Faye went back to visit Junior. And when she went back, she said he was all head. He seemed like he was sick, dehydrated. They told her that he had just got out the hospital 3 days earlier from some illness. She really couldn't believe her eyes. She asked them, can I take him to the car just to have a little quality time with him? And when they were sitting in the car, Junior started to vomit in her car. She contemplated on just like taking him, like kidnapping him, but she didn't want to get in trouble. So Faye just returned him back to his parents. But on January 22nd, just a week later, Ronnie Paris Sr. and the mother, Nigeria, was at Bible study, allegedly, which was held at one of the friends' house, but they ended up taking Junior with them. Junior fell asleep on the couch, and after a while, they noticed that he wasn't breathing. They immediately called 911, but when the paramedics got there and tried to perform CPR, he remained in cardiac arrest. Junior could not breathe on his own, so he was placed on life support. He died 6 days later. The autopsy report revealed that the cause of his death was blunt force trauma to the back of the head. He sustained 3 severe blows, which caused internal trauma to the brain. It was also discovered that this is where those vomiting spells were coming from. Ronnie Paris Sr. and the mother were arrested immediately, but once in questioning, the mother said it was all Ronnie. She said she'd seen him hit Junior in the back of the head multiple times. She said that he would hit him while she was holding him. At one point, he threw Junior at him, and on another occasion, he slammed Junior up against the wall. According to the mother, it started off with them play fighting and escalated. She said on multiple occasions, Ronnie Paris Sr. would say that he didn't want his son to be soft. Even Ronnie Sr.'s sister vouched for the mother and said that he did abuse his son, and that he had confided in her, saying that he thought his son might end up being gay, and that he couldn't handle his son being a quote-unquote sissy. On February 2nd, 2005, Ronnie Paris Sr. and the mother were both charged with the death of Ronnie Paris Jr. During the trial that started July 2005, it came out that Ronnie wanted more attention from his wife. He often complained that they didn't have sex since little Ronnie was born. He often even asked, was Junior even his? The day before Junior died, the mother said that Ronnie Sr. came in the house upset, came in the kitchen, and threw the baby up against the wall. She said Junior was acting strange after that. Even somebody from their Bible study group witnessed Ronnie Sr. abusing Ronnie Jr. August 2005, Ronnie Paris Sr. was sentenced to 30 years in prison. His mother said her son ain't never did nothing wrong. Lady, and not to mention, Nigeria Paris was only sentenced to 5 years probation for negligence. What y'all think about that?
That's how I would scream if he came up behind me. He looks like the exact kind of guy that you would think would do something like this. Ugh. We're getting straight into the story because what the Elizabeth Shoaf was the middle child in her family. She grew up in a small town in South Carolina. Her older sister moved away, so now living at home was only her parents, and her little brother. She was a freshman in high school. She had just started dating the boy that she really liked. She was at a very exciting point in her life. She was giddy and nervous, but very excited about what the future held for her. Things were looking good for her in 2006 until her entire life was turned upside down by something nobody could have expected. Elizabeth's everyday routine was to get up, get ready for school, go to school, take the bus home, and work on some homework while she waited for her parents to come home. And that's exactly what she did September 6th of 2006. She went to school, normal day, took the bus home from school. She got off the bus and got home around 3:30 p.m. She got off the bus with a group of friends, and one of the friends' brother actually drove by and saw them, and he stopped asking them if they wanted a ride home the rest of the way. But Elizabeth was so close to her house, she was pretty much almost there, that she was like, no, you're fine, I'll just walk. So she continued walking as everyone else drove away. That was the last time that Elizabeth would be seen for the next 10 days. Elizabeth's little brother Donnie was confused as to why Elizabeth wasn't home yet at the usual time that she would be. So he called his aunt, who called his mom. Elizabeth's mom was named Madeline, and when Madeline heard that Elizabeth did not make it home from school, she left work and rushed home immediately. And I think it's just a mom's instinct to immediately worry. She tried to wait as long as she could, hoping that Elizabeth would just walk in through the doors, but she never did. And by 5:30 p.m., she called 911 to report her daughter missing. Officers were dispatched to their house to talk to them, and at first they were like, she's a 14-year-old girl, there's a chance that she ran away, she probably is just a runaway, so let's just wait and see. And her parents were like, no, you don't understand, our daughter would not run away, and even in the weird off chance that she would want to leave, she wouldn't leave this way because she would know that her entire family would be worried sick about her, and there's no way that she would let that happen. So eventually the cops agreed and they started the search for Elizabeth, but it wasn't going to be an easy search. Elizabeth's house in the neighborhood that she lived in was surrounded by woods. There was a lot of ground to cover, but authorities headed out to start the search for her. They looked everywhere that she thought she may have ended up. They questioned classmates, neighbors, friends, family, the group of friends she got off the bus with. They questioned the boyfriend as well. They followed up on every call, every lead, every potential sighting of her. But no matter how much progress they were making in their investigation, they really weren't making any at all because they couldn't find anything. It was like 1 second she was there, she was walking home, and then the next second she was just gone. 7 days passed, and on the 7th day of her disappearance, her mom received a text that shook her to her core. The text came from an unknown number, and it read, quote, "Hey mom, it's Lizzie. I'm in the ground near Charm Hill. It's near that dirt road where those big trucks park. Go get the police though, because he has been," end quote. Madeline's mom could not believe her eyes. She said, quote, "I was hysterical. Yeah, I was in shock too, because I was like, oh my God, here's what I have been waiting for. This is what we've been praying for all of these days, just to get one answer as to where she was. And this was our answer," end quote. Elizabeth's mom said that she knew that text came from her daughter, not only because she called herself Lizzie instead of Elizabeth, but because she spelled it with one Z instead of two. There was not a question in her mind that that text came from Elizabeth. Authorities quickly were able to trace the number to a nearby neighborhood, Charm Hill, that same area that Elizabeth mentioned in her text, and they searched all night and into the next day, but they still had no luck. U.S. Marshals were tasked with tracing who that phone number belonged to, and they soon discovered that the phone number was registered to a man named Vincent. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I think you say it Phil, yeah, but 36-year-old Vincent was a man that authorities had been looking for the last year in connection to an entirely different case, but it was a case of the SA of a 12-year-old girl. Officers rushed to Vincent's trailer home, and they did not find Vincent, they did not find Elizabeth, but you know what they did find? Inside of his home, they found a hole in the ground that had been his hiding spot for the last year. That's where he would hide when police would come knocking on his door looking for him. He literally built an underground little hiding spot, little bedroom for him. And they also found other holes outside of his trailer. They found holes that have been described as underground bunkers. And by the pictures that I saw, they look pretty massive. Like he fully built beds in there. It was not a small hole. They were not small holes. And what is with this man and digging underground? How does he have so much time to build all these holes? I'd love to know. Regardless, when Elizabeth had texted her mom, we know that she claimed to be underground. Vincent's criminal history and profile perfectly matched the exact kind of person who would want to kidnap a young girl, and these now newfound underground bunkers on his residence were pretty much the nail in the coffin. Authorities knew they had the right guy. Now they just had to find him before it was too late. 10 days into her disappearance on September 16th, authorities discovered what they had been looking for. A group of officers were walking through the woods when one of them thought that he heard a girl yelling. He told all the other officers to stand still, and they all did, and then they heard the girl's voice again. It was Elizabeth Shove. Her voice was coming from the woods somewhere. She was screaming for help. They rushed towards her voice. They found her, and an officer, a detective, I think, as soon as he saw her, he just hugged her so tight and told her that everything was going to be okay. She was safe now. They saw the underground bunker, and it looked straight out of a horror film. Elizabeth was taken to hospital, and she was reunited with her family, and they were over the moon. I mean, this does not happen often, sadly. She was gone for 10 days, but luckily she was able to return home safely. Madeline, her mother, saw her. She gave her the biggest hug, and she described seeing her daughter again and getting to hug her again was the best feeling in the entire world. And then Elizabeth described to authorities what she had been through the last 10 days. On September 6th, 36-year-old Vincent had been walking by some woods when he saw Elizabeth Shove get off her school bus, and he approached her. He approached her dressed in a homemade makeshift fake cop costume with a fake badge, disguising himself as a police officer. Elizabeth recalls, quote, "I was just walking down my driveway and heard some shuffling in the leaves to my right, and as I looked in that direction, he approached me and stated that he was with the Kershaw County Sheriff's Department apartment. He told me I was under arrest, end quote. Vincent made up a fake story telling her that she was under arrest and saying that her 12-year-old brother was already in custody. He put her in handcuffs and told her that she needed to come with him for questioning. Elizabeth, worried sick about her little brother, went with him, but then Vincent turned to her. He wrapped a small box around her neck and told her that it was a weapon and that if she did not comply, the weapon would go off. As they started walking to the woods, Elizabeth could still hear her dogs barking in the background. And at one point, she could still see her house through the trees. I can't imagine, like, she was so close but so far at the same time. When they reached the bunker, Vincent looked at her and told her that she had just been kidnapped, and he told her to climb inside. This is a 14-year-old girl. She was absolutely terrified, and she did what he told her to do. Once they were both 8 feet underground, he padlocked the door shut, ordered her to remove her clothing, chained her from the ceiling, and S8'd her. She was subjected to SA every single day for the next 10 days. Elizabeth realized the only way that she was going to be able to get out of this would be to play a mind game with him. This guy obviously was sick in the head. She just had to learn how to take advantage of how broken his brain was and make it work for her. So she stopped fighting. She decided that she was going to comply with everything that he told her and asked her to do, and she was putting effort in to gain his trust, to get Vincent to like her so he would let his guard down. She has said, quote, "He'd always call me baby, so I'd call him that back, and he would tell me he loved me, and I told him I loved him. I'd act like I really liked him and I wanted to be with him," end quote. And it worked. Vincent started to let his guard down and he started to trust Elizabeth. He slowly started to give her a little bit more freedom. He unchained her. He would often let her walk around and sometimes even play games on his phone, sometimes even when he was asleep. And one night when he was sleeping, Elizabeth saw it as her one and only opportunity. She took his phone and she sent that text to her mom. As Elizabeth was recovering in the hospital, she faced such a difficult struggle trying to return back to her old life. She was a completely different person. The kidnapping had affected her massively, obviously. And she had to work through so many mental battles to truly, really feel safe again. But having her loved ones around her, showing her the best support system that she could ask for, really helped her. Vincent was arrested 1 county over. He was charged with kidnapping, 10 counts of first-degree criminal, SA, 1 charge for every day that Elizabeth was held, and impersonating a police officer. Minutes before his trial was set to begin, Vincent handed over a 120-page manuscript that he had written while in custody. That manuscript contained explicit detail about all the horrific things that he did, not only to 14-year-old Elizabeth, but also to that 12-year-old girl from previous years. He was sentenced to 421 years in prison, the maximum punishment possible. And on May 4th of 2021, he passed away in jail at the age of 51. Elizabeth went on to graduate college. She got a job working as a dental assistant, and I will end this video with a quote from her from 2013. She said, quote, "You can be a survivor just like I am. It simply takes faith. It takes talking to someone and encouragement that it's not the end of the world," end quote. Don't get me wrong, absolute nightmare of a story, and no one deserves to have anything like this done to them, but it does bring me joy when I end the stories and say that the victims were still alive. That is all I have for today's episode. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
Everyone needs to take a good look at this baby because she's been missing since at least late April, and now 5 people have been arrested in connection to her disappearance. This is 8-month-old Maya Tucker Rudd. She was last known to be with her parents, Cage and Tesla, at their home in Reynolds Station, Kentucky. Both Cage and Tesla have a history of drug offenses, and on May 30th, some of their family notified CPS that they hadn't seen baby Maya in weeks. This obviously sparked an investigation, and when CPS couldn't locate her, they called Kentucky State Police to conduct a welfare check at their home on Deanfield Church Road. Baby Maya was nowhere to be found, but a large amount of drugs was found inside the home. Not long after, both Cage and Tesla were arrested at a motel about 30 minutes away and were in possession of a large amount of drugs as well, including fentanyl. They lied to police and said that family services had taken Maya. CPS had previously taken 3 older children from the home and had plans to take Maya as well to be with her siblings, but before that could happen, Maya vanished. And it's now been months since she was last seen by anybody. Cage and Tesla have not been cooperative in the search for baby Maya either. They have both been arrested on multiple multiple drug charges, trafficking, abandonment of a minor, and are facing child abuse. Maya's grandparents, Ricky Smith and Billy Rudd, have also been arrested in connection to her disappearance. At the time of her disappearance, Maya's grandpa Ricky was living with them at their home, and police say that he was using the home as a trafficking base. At the time of his arrest, he had a ton of drugs on him. He's facing drug trafficking and child abuse charges, as well as having weapons as a convicted felon. Maya's grandma Billy was arrested on a domestic violence warrant from late last year. A fifth person was arrested in relation to Maya's disappearance as well. His name is Timothy Roach, and as of right now, it's not clear how he's tied into everything. Although when police pulled up to search their house, Timothy was in their driveway and had thrown drugs underneath his car. They are all being held in the Ohio County Detention Center. Authorities have brought in cadaver dogs to search for Maya near a wooded area and a church on Hardin Road, which is not even a mile from the family's home. But so far, they haven't found anything. The fact that an 8-month-old hasn't been seen for months is horrifying, yet police say that this does not meet the requirements for an Amber Alert. She was born in October and sadly tested positive for meth, so police are wondering if she could have possibly been sold for drugs. Where is baby Maya? If you have any information about this case, please call 270-826-3312. This is Luna County Deputy Paul Garcia. On November 11th, 2023, he recklessly killed this beautiful little baby boy, 14-month-old Wyatt James. This is his story. On November 11th of last year, Deputy Paul Garcia was responding to an active burglary call in Deming, New Mexico. Dashcam video shows Paul and another officer recklessly going upwards of 130 miles per hour on Highway 11. And during that call, Paul crashed into a car. Inside that car was Isabella and her 14-month-old beautiful baby, Wyatt. Isabella was knocked unconscious and suffered severe injuries, and when she woke up, she couldn't breathe, yet she was trying to ask where her baby was. The dashcam video that was released is incredibly disturbing because it shows responding officers trying to save baby Wyatt's life and performing CPR on his body outside of the car. But sadly, he was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. He died of blunt trauma directly as a result from Deputy Paul Garcia driving recklessly. What has come to light during this investigation, though, is just horrible. Paul had a criminal history prior to joining the Luna County Sheriff's Office. In 2015, he was charged with an aggravated DWI and 3 counts of child abuse. This all stemmed from him driving drunk with 3 people under the age of 18 in his car. According to reports, while he was being arrested for that, he willingly admitted to having another DWI prior to that in Texas. So in total, Paul had 2 DWIs in 2015, and then just a year later went on to become a deputy with the Luna County Sheriff's Office. The fact that he wasn't screened or vetted before being hired or sworn in as an officer is incredibly alarming, and everyone needs to know this. Paul has since been charged with homicide by vehicle, and Isabella has filed a civil case against him and the Luna County Commissioners. But as of right now, literally as I'm making this video, justice has not been served. A preliminary hearing was supposed to take place on May 16th, but Paul had it waived and a new date has not been set yet. And to make matters worse, this is a statement from the Luna County Sheriff's Office. He's been put on a paid leave for killing an innocent baby. According to the department's policy, officers who are responding to a call with their lights and sirens on can't legally go more than 20 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. That day when he crashed into Isabella, he was going 99 miles per hour. The speed limit was 55, yet it's like he's getting a slap on the wrist for breaking the law and taking an innocent life, a baby's life. I know I'm not the only one that feels this way, but the Luna County Sheriff's Office was negligent for hiring him. Deputy Paul Garcia was reckless. He endangered an entire community and needs to be held accountable. And it's just like what this retired officer said. It doesn't do you any good if you're responding to a hot call, if your driving is so reckless that you're involved in a crash and don't get there. He reportedly hasn't even apologized to Isabella for what happened that day, and according to her, she's even received threats from his family and friends telling her to be careful what she says. Her voice and Wyatt's story cannot be silenced.